Hello there, Tania Gustafson here, your nutritionist and fitness coach with Fit Nutrition. Welcome back to another episode of Fit Nutrition Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about food labels and packaging and what they're really telling you or not telling you, and all of the things that go with that. So let me know where you're watching from. If you're watching, on the replay and wherever you're catching me from, I'd love to hear where people are tuning in from. I'm here in Kelowna, BC, Canada. So, if you're also in Canada, drop me a little Canadian flag, put your flag where your country's from. That'll be super fun to see all those in the chat. Okay, so today talking about labeling. And now this is a huge thing. And, especially with back to school and, families are getting back into the groove and needing things to put in lunches and the panic of what do I pack? What do I put in there? And I want something fast. And so that tends to lead to a few more packaged items. Now, as many of you know, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I have a background in education. So you know that I worked in schools for a number of years, almost 2 decades in education, over 2 decades in special needs and behavior therapy and all of that. So, I've seen a lot of kids with lunches, and I've seen a lot of employees and staff members with lunches and things like that. And there's a lot of indication that when people are choosing items, that they don't actually know what's in them. They're going by what the package is telling them on the outside. Now, there's a huge difference between what the package is telling you on the outside and what the actual ingredients are showing you on the inside. And also, within that ingredient list, then, what do all those ingredients mean? Okay, so today we're going to touch on one sugar. So if you're following me along on social media, you would have seen that I did a super short little 1-minute blurb with one of our local radio media hosts here, Toby Tanis, and it was on Kelowna 10. You can find that on Kelowna 10 online, or you can find it on social media on Beach Radio. And it was just a little short clip of how to choose and put together kids' lunches, but I talked really briefly in there about labels as well too. And sometimes what we think is healthy is not. And we're swayed by what the packaging says, or we're influenced by what the packaging says, even though, if you were to ask somebody, well, does it matter what, is that governing your opinion? You're like, no, I'm making an educated choice. I think I know what I'm doing. And that's the way it's designed, though. So let's just first and foremost say that any company that's selling anything, including food, is a business. They are in business. And what are businesses in the business of? Making money. Otherwise, their business is no more, right? So it's not that, when companies put out products that are maybe not serving our goals, put it that way, or not the healthiest items out there, I don't think that there's malicious intent to make the population unhealthier as a whole. But because they are, their primary focus is increasing that bottom line and generating a profit and bringing in income, their primary focus is not on health. There's very few companies that are like that. There are some companies out there that are like that, and that's, if people have, contacted me asking about different products and what I would recommend. And those are the reasons why, because those companies they are in the business of making money, but they are also in the business of health. And so they have learned to marry that quite well. So that being said, those are not generally your grocery store items, right? They're typically specific special order items. But just for all of us who go to the grocery store every week and we're buying our things and doing all the things and maybe, trying to choose a little healthier, you need to know what you're choosing. That's the bottom line. And so one of the things, so just to give a little backstory, I've been to a lot of nutrition events and seminars and workshops and all of the things, and heard a ton of speakers, which I am so grateful for. And one did not actually start in the business of health. He started as an economist. He worked for 2 former presidencies in the United States. Actually, his name is Paul Zane Pilzer. And I remember seeing him speak. And I was like, okay, what's this, economist guy going to talk about health about? That's kind of interesting. And so I was intrigued at the outset of that. And then I was super blown away by his talk, because he came at it from the money side of it and showed just what is going on and how it's going on, how it's happening behind the scenes in some of the larger food companies and conglomerates around the world, and how then that is affecting us. So one of them, he was very privileged to be in one of those testing rooms, where they do the product testing, and they were doing a satiety test. So satiety is that point at which you want no more. Super simple. So his example was, okay, say you've never had a banana before. Someone gives you a banana, you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And you eat one and you probably want another one right away because you've never had them before. They're so delicious. By the time you get to the third one, you may take a couple bites and you're like, yeah, this is really good, but I think I've had enough now. And I'll save it for later. That's your satiety level. It's great, you love it, but now you've had enough. Companies do testing on products, restaurants, big chains, McDonald's. That's where the testing room he was in, was doing this test on satiety level of their French fries. And so they had people eating French fries. And as soon as so he's sitting in the background watching, observing, taking notes. And the person who's running the test, someone from the company, as soon as the participants in the study started to get to that point, yeah, okay, I'm good. Thank you so much. I love it, but I've had enough. They turned to the chemist in the room and said, fix that. So food is engineered sometimes, not all foods, but a lot of foods are engineered so that we want more, so that we will buy more, so that they will sell more, and then they will make more money. And that would be okay if that were, your fruits and vegetables, but they can't engineer those, they can't make them taste, you can't change the taste of an apple really, except if you have a different brand of an apple. You know what I'm saying, right? It's a lot more difficult to do those kinds of things, a lot more things involved, rather than if you have a packaged item, you can just add more things to it or take away things or adjust the things that are in there in order to create a different response from your consumer. So that's where they're going with that. And the other thing is packaging is a little bit sneaky as well too. So if they here was the example that he gave, and again, it's I don't remember what company it was, but it was for like potato chips. You know how you can get the little bags of potato chips or whatever size bag it is. They have determined in this study that people's satiety level was at 100 grams of potato chips. So they would eat 100 grams of potato chips and feel very satisfied and not want to have any more. Okay, great. That sounds like great. You're not eating an entire, Costco bag, right? So what they did was, instead of making the bags 100 grams to satisfy people, they made the bags 80 grams. So you weren't satisfied. So if you had that big tray of little mini bags, the ones from Halloween, then you would open the second bag. And generally when people open the second bag, they kind of finish it, right? Or even if they don't finish it, the company doesn't care. You bought more because you're eating more, you're opening more bags. So that's just kind of a little bit of the backstory around packaging and what can actually happen and what is actually happening behind the scenes and with labeling and with companies with our food. So I've got a couple of boxes here, and this is actually one of the ones that I used in that little video with Toby that I talked about at the beginning of this podcast. And this one I just wanted to talk about because it had so many things on the box. And that's why I picked this up for that. I haven't even opened it. No one's even eaten it from my house, but it's a good thing. You'll find out why. So when you take a look at this box, I know that the print is probably reversed, but you can see that it says crispy squares. It's a s'more flavor, right? Kids love s'mores. You can see the little chocolate and the little marshmallows. And so that kind of that'll be catchy to the kids. What will be catchy to the parents? Oh, it says it's school approved, right? What does school approved mean? Oh, peanut free. And then they have over here on the other side, even just to, bolster that a little bit more, it's also tree nut free and peanut free, and it's gluten free. And then they say gluten-free somewhere, gluten-free down here as well too. So that's super important. If someone, is looking for gluten-free, they want to know it's gluten-free. Does that mean it's healthier? Not really. It's just telling you what it's not. Remember that. This is telling you what it's not, all of these things, okay? Right now, this one says lower in sugar. Lower than what? We don't know, right? This lower than one of the other boxes from this company. We don't know. But when we see this, we typically don't recognize that it's lower. We just think it says low sugar. Okay, great. It's low sugar. Everybody knows that their kids should be consuming less sugar, right? I'm just thinking, you guys are all smart people out there. Everybody knows that everybody in general should be consuming less sugar. Just a thing. We know that. So you think, okay, that's really healthy. It's got less sugar in it. My school's not going to send it home. My kid's allowed to eat it. It's great. It's nut free. It's gluten-free. That's great. Oh, there's another one, dairy-free. Oh, and it's got to be super healthy because it says it's non-GMO certified. Well, all right, now let's flip it over. So the lower in sugar says lower in sugar than the national leading Rice Krispie Square. Okay, well, we don't know how many grams of sugar that National Crispy Square has. That really doesn't tell you anything. Again, it's just telling you what it's not. It's not telling you what it is. So this is part of the thing. It's very brightly colored. The other thing, I'm not sure, you probably noticed, or maybe you didn't because I was pointing at other things. Look at this right in the middle. Healthy. It almost looks like that's their brand is healthy. Like they've named their company Healthy. They have not, though. It's called Artisanal Foods, but they've trademarked the word healthy. That's interesting. So nobody else can use that. I'm not quite sure how that works, but it says made in small batches. Is that supposed to mimic homemade so that we're thinking that it's, a better quality product? Lots of things on this little package. It's a very little package. There's only 6 items in this little box. Okay, and then when I go back here to the ingredient list, okay, there is, because the French ones are under my finger. So all of those ingredients are in this box. And then the last thing says it's just manufactured in a tree nut free, peanut free, and gluten free facility. So they are really, this is good for allergies. You want to look for those things as well if your child has severe allergies or someone in their class has allergies, something like that. So those are helpful in that respect. But now looking at the ingredient list, remember it says lower sugar. Oh, I got the French side up now. Sorry, lower sugar. And if you look in this list, none of the ingredients on here say sugar. They don't. The word sugar doesn't appear. But there is brown rice crisp. Well, what is brown rice crisp? It contains rice syrup. Rice syrup is another name for sugar. And tapioca syrup. Oh, another syrup. So there's another sugar. And then there's chocolate chips with cane sugar. Oh, so the word sugar does appear. Sorry, my bad. Chocolate chips. So there's cane sugar in there. And then there's vegetable blend of an apple extract. So more sugar. When you do something to a fruit and you take the fiber out, you extract things from it. You've taken all the fiber out and you've concentrated it into sugar. So there's another sugar, and it goes on like that. And so, there you are. So it's lower than the national leading brand, telling you, but it's also full of other sugars. So sure, it's gluten-free, nut-free, dairy-free, and lower in sugar, but it wouldn't be something that, now that you heard me go through the label, if you're looking to get some nutrients for your child, this isn't it, right? And then you look at the nutrition facts. So the nutrition facts, all the vitamins are listed as 0%. Adding vitamins and enriching your food anyway, they're synthetic, so you're best to get them from your whole fruits and vegetables or a really good quality vitamin supplement, not from packaged food items, okay? And there's also very little protein. So teeny bit of protein and a lot of carbs. So you know that carbs are not the enemy. We always advocate that here. I'm always telling my people carbs are not the enemy. They are your energy. That is a true statement. But when you're talking about a processed carb, anything that comes in a package, box, bag, can, or wrapper has a carb in it or is primarily a carb. And when you have those processed things together like that with no protein, your blood sugar goes up and then you crash down very fast on the other side. So if your child takes this out for recess and eats one and they have the energy to run around like crazy, but then that energy is like spiking up and they come back in the classroom, they can't sit still and they're a little bit fidgety more than they would be if they, had a whole food with some protein, maybe a cheese string and an apple, something like that, much better choices. And then because it went up so fast and the body isn't slowing down the digestion because there's way too much processed items and sugar in there, then it's going to come crashing down really fast, and then they get cranky and grumpy and they can't pay attention, they can't focus because there wasn't enough nutrients in there, and now they're becoming hungry before it's time to have lunch. So there's a whole bunch of things that happen, and that goes the same for grown-ups as well as kids. Have you ever had one of those meeting lunches? You know, you're been sitting and you're still sitting and you're having their lunch, and they bring in these big old sandwiches or pizza, or maybe just it's a breakfast meeting and there's a whole bunch of croissants and things like that, and maybe there's some fresh fruit to go along with it. Well, that's carb, carb, and carb. Again, fresh fruit is great carbs, but if you're not pairing something with protein, then everything's going straight up because it's turning to sugar, turning to glucose, and spiking your blood sugar, causing a whoosh of insulin, and then all of a sudden it crashes. And so you've been in that meeting. We've all been in those meetings, right? Where later on you're like, oh, I can barely keep my eyes open. What is going on? I feel terrible. I don't want to fall asleep. We've all been there, and that is why. So if you had something that was balanced with some protein to go with it, or protein in some raw vegetables or things like that, you would have a much better energy. You'd be stable and you'd be feeling much better. So thinking about that when you're packing your kids' lunches. Now, am I saying don't ever give them a treat? No, absolutely not. Am I saying add some protein with that? Absolutely. So if this is, if this happens to be a treat food that you give to your kids once in a while, or whatever it is, whatever it happens to be, okay, not the best quality, making some homemade cookies, I would highly advocate that over buying, some of the granola bars or things like this. But, if you're not a baker and you do that once in a while, then teach your kids to have some protein with that. Show them what it is. Maybe that's a hard-boiled egg. Maybe that's, a cheese string. Maybe that's a Greek yogurt cup. And then there's a whole thing about yogurt. Please don't buy those yogurt tubes. Those are basically pudding. There's no protein in them. Let's just call it a day with that. So when you're, so back to the labels and the labeling. This is something that is really designed to take your eye off of, take it away from flipping it over. That's the marketing. Okay. It's got all these things that people look for, those buzzwords and those really bright, those nice little colors and all those gluten-free and nut-free and all of that, to make you believe that you have enough information so that you don't have to flip it over, because they know if you flip it over, you're probably not going to be impressed and you'll put it back. Okay. And my personal experience with that, a couple of years ago, I did a little experiment. So I went into one of the health food stores in the mall here where I live. And, so again, talking about the sugar, and stevia is a better sugar. It's a smart sugar. Stevia, monk fruit are both much better choices than having, a fake sugar or something like that. And if you're going to have, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of cane sugar, like organic cane sugar in something. You want to have a small dose, but again, you want to have the fiber in there as well too in the product. You want to have some protein in there. I'm talking protein shakes here now as well. And you want to have things like that with qualities so that it's not an issue in your body, right? You still don't want to have large amounts of it, but a small amount is not so bad. So here I am looking at these things, and then I start seeing, sweetened with stevia, or sugar-free or whatever. Oh, those are the kinds of things that grab your attention, right? You're like, oh, okay. So let's see exactly how they do it. So I remember picking up these containers one after the other. It was just incredible. And it would say on the front, sugar-free. So you'd flip it over. Oh, aspartame, sucralose, NutraSweet, any of those, right? They're all fake sugars. I'm like, well, there's just a digestive upset waiting to happen. Endocrine disruptors as well too. Toxins, neurotoxins, not so good. Keep picking them up. There's some more. Oh, these ones say sweetened with stevia. Awesome. So I pick it up and I look on the back. Sure enough, there is stevia in it. I cannot fault them for that. There is stevia. But by the way it looked on the front of the carton, you would think that the entire item is sweetened with stevia, that there's no other sweeteners in there. It was very bold. It was very bright. You turn it over and the last item on the list was stevia. So now items are in a descending order of amount on any product. So the last one in the list is going to be the least amount in that item. And that's okay when you're talking sweeteners. However, it was such a tiny amount, they just put it in there for show. And you know that because right above it was aspartame, sucralose, NutraSweet, all of those other things, depending on which one I picked up, ahead of it. So because stevia is it's a much higher quality sweetener, therefore it costs the company more. So if they put a teeny tiny bit in there, they can claim that it's in there. They don't have to say that, oh, we didn't use the whole thing. All they need to do is say sweetened with stevia, because it is. a portion of it is, but it's misleading. So the message here today is whatever you see on the front is only telling you most of the time what it's not. And it might be telling you something true, but how true is it? Like with the stevia on the protein powders I was just talking about. So make sure that you flip it over and read your labels, the ingredients, the nutrient value content. You want to make sure that there's a protein in there with your carbs and fats. You want to make sure that the ingredient list is not more than 5. I mean, unless it's full of whole fooding, like actual food items, ingredients in there. But if you're looking at that and you're not recognizing a whole bunch of other things, where there's lots of things that have syrups and extracts and, pure concentrates of fruits and things like that, those are all sugar, 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 and more sugar. Okay, so that's today's lesson. I hope you got some great value out of that. Drop your comments below if this sparked a conversation or resonated with you. And join me next time on another episode of Fit Nutrition Podcast. Thanks, guys, for joining.